Hello, everybody. Welcome into this week's Tuesday Waivers live stream. I am Ryan Wormley, not Joey P. I am filling in for our friend and colleague as he is otherwise preoccupied today. I am joined by the man who is always here on Tuesdays, Debro, Derek Brown. Debro, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. I'm just trying to collect myself and get my head right. Pat and I were up late, updating waiver wire ranks, the articles, so everything is adjusted for all the news. And I know we're going to talk about it, Worm, but it was a magnificent game last night in a doubleheader in the sense of all the point scoring and watching Baltimore. I know you were a happy fan in that realm, but also tons of carnage. And I know we're going to get through all of this, but it's going to make what honestly was, we walked into this like thinking it was going to be kind of a kind of waiver wire week. It got a lot more interesting last night, man. A lot more.
Carnage is definitely the right word. You never want to see that, obviously. No. Super unfun to watch stuff like that. I mean, let's start off with Tampa, because I just think that's kind of where everybody's mind is at right now. Mm-hmm. Obviously, early on in that game, Mike Evans, who was already coming into this game banged up with the hamstring, dropped a pass in the end zone, goes down, immediately grabbing at the hamstring, looked really bad. And then looking even worse in the last minute of that game was Chris Godwin. So both of these wide receiver stars that have really helped elevate this offense, they've helped elevate Baker Mayfield this year, are now looking, I mean, we don't know yet 100% everything because it just happened last night, but certainly looking like very long-term absences for both of them. Given what we've seen, probably a dislocated ankle for Godwin and then that hamstring re-aggravation for Evans. So what was your initial takeaway besides being, feeling really bad for these guys? What was your initial takeaway? Was it more about what a downgrade this is going to mean for Baker Mayfield? Was it more about who are the guys that are going to step up in their absences in this offense? What was the kind of the first thing your mind went to?
I mean, it went to, what does this passing attack look like moving forward for the next 2 to 3 weeks? I mean, Mike Evans dealing with the re-aggravation of the hamstring, we can definitely say like he's not going to play this week probably. I would pretty much say that's probably 100% or close to it. I think it's probably going to be a multi-week injury considering he didn't practice all week until the weekend. And then, so you're looking at maybe a 2 to 3 game absence for Mike Evans. So we're looking at a starting trio for the Bucs of Trey Palmer, Jalen McMillan, and Sterling Shepard. And so how are we going to parse through all these guys? Who's going to take what roles? Who's going to play where? I think Palmer, and honestly, I think the big thing people want to know is who's going to go into the Chris Godwin role. I kind of lean it's going to be Sterling Shepard going into the slot. Like McMillan, they've been playing him outside for most of the season, like running opposite Evans and Godwin. Maybe we see McMillan go into the slot, but honestly, I think probably the better fit is to put Sterling Shepard into the slot. We've seen him be extremely productive throughout his NFL career when he's been healthy as a slot wide receiver. And McMillan's already been playing on the outside when Evans and Godwin were there. So his role might not even change, but Sterling Shepard might be the big winner from all of these injuries. And he's the guy where I think if both of those guys are out there on the waiver wire, I think people are going to be, spending the 10 to 15% for McMillan, when honestly, your better bang for your buck might be Sterling Shepard. But Worm, am I wrong? How do you see that working out?
Well, I don't know if what I'm about to say is just because of the matchup that we saw last night, or if this is the way they want to operate. But, Evans was limited and or out for most of that game. Obviously, Godwin played most of the game. But without Evans, if you look at the receiving leaders in this game for Tampa just last night, it's Cade Otton, tight end. It's Rachaad White, caught 2 touchdowns at 71 yards. Godwin's in there. Next, Bucky Irving had 54 receiving yards. Then Mike Evans, who's now gone to, you get pretty low on the list before getting to any of these guys. So I wonder if maybe it means we will see more of the tight end involvement from Cade Otton, more of the running back involvement in the passing game. Obviously, that's, something that is a skill set of Rachaad White's anyway. I mean, it was funny watching the game. I really expected Tampa Bay to struggle running the ball. And during the game, I kind of was thinking to myself, wow, they're doing a lot better than I expected. And then you look at the box score and it's like, oh, most of that was actually in the passing game. They still were yet another team to not have any running back get over 50 yards against Baltimore. So I wonder if just we see the passing game transition into more of a, the correct winner is Cade Otton or, the running backs even more so than any of the receivers. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I wanted to make sure we talked about and gave Cade Otton his shine before moving on, because Yeah, I mean, he popped off with the monster game. We talked about him on the Key Questions episode last week, and I was like, I think he's going to have a huge game because Baltimore has been funneling a lot of production to the middle of the field. Tight ends have been feasting versus them, but also Cade Otton has quietly, he was already the wide receiver 3 on this team over the last few weeks. His target share crept up, and now he's got good, if not great. I mean, week 9, fantastic matchup. Probably the best matchup on the board for tight ends going against the Chiefs. So Cade Otton is firmly planted as a tight end 1 moving forward. And I think you're right. If you talk about the entire fallout of all of this, Cade Otton is probably the biggest winner out of all of these injuries and stuff. And I hate to frame it like that, but honestly,
Yeah.
Okay, so he's going to get the biggest target share bump. He could be leading them in targets until Mike Evans comes back. The matchups are good. So, yeah, I mean, I think Cade Otton is a huge winner considering the fallout of all of this stuff. But Baker Mayfield, he's been playing lights out. He's been awesome and a no-brainer start of the last few weeks for us in fantasy. He takes a huge hit here. I mean, probably we're going to see a Bucs offense that probably goes from pass heavy. They've been running slow to probably more run balanced. And maybe, so they're going to be throwing the ball less, and it takes a lot of the ceiling away from Baker Mayfield, especially until Mike Evans comes back.
Cade Otton, by the way, 39% rostered on Yahoo, 42% rostered on ESPN. So like pretty available for a guy that we think is going to be a top 12 tight end moving forward for as long as these guys are injured. Yeah, as far as the receivers go, just to kind of put a bow on it, like you do have to put in claims for these guys, like, because we don't know 100%. So like, go try and get them. Just don't spend your whole fab on them. And I would put in a claim on all 3 of Trey Palmer, Jalen, McMillan, and Sterling Shepard, and just hope to get one of them and try and kind of spin the wheel and land on the right guy. And we'll see how it looks going forward. But I think you can make a reasonable case for any of them as kind of being beneficiaries of these injuries. Again, yeah, like we don't say winner because we're happy about this, obviously. Like, it's very sad.
It was gruesome and it sucked, man.
And it's like they both see, like, I don't know them personally, obviously, but like Evans and Godwin both seem like just wonderful, like, contributors to the community. And just like they, obviously Godwin has come back from a serious injury in the past before too. So, really a bummer to see. I will say, we talked about this a bit before we started the show, that I think it was reasonable he was on the field. Like, the Ravens have had 2 onside kicks converted against them already this year. So I mean, I think they got like kind of unlucky in last night's because it was just a really perfect bounce by, on that onside kick recovery. But like, this has happened twice now to this team. Like, they were only down 10. And they had been scoring quickly against a depleted secondary. Like, I actually do think it was reasonable I know everybody was like, the game was already lost. I don't think that was true. If it was like a 3 touchdown score at that point, then yes, like, I'm not here for the, like, gotta stay competitive till the final whistle, like anything like that. But to me, this is a 10-point game and they had the ball. Like,
I agree.
I don't think it was crazy that he was on the field.
No, I adamantly agree. If you were to tell me that they were up 14 points, then I understand it. But 10 points where you're talking about a touchdown and a field goal, like, I get it, man. Like, that's honestly, when I saw that come across the timeline last night, I was like, really? Did you just see what the Buccaneers, like, it was a blowout game. And then all of a sudden, like that, like, I'm sitting here making dinner and I turned around and I was like, whoa, what the heck? How did the Buccaneers get freaking 30 points? And so they're down by 10 points. So you're telling me, like, no head coach is pulling his guys. No head coach is pulling the starters.
I was surprised.
And no guy would have come out of the game. Like, nobody.
I was surprised the Ravens pulled Lamar, honestly, because for that final drive, they had Josh Johnson in there. I was like, it's a 10-point game against an offense that at that point still had Godwin healthy and has been explosive against your defense. So like, I didn't really feel like the Ravens were going to lose, but it was close enough that I think it's very reasonable to have your star still play. I was a little confused by how, I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? And
exactly. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Like, we could debate this all, but if Godwin would have walked out of that game healthy, then this wouldn't even be a talking point. You wouldn't hear anybody chirping about, oh, why is he still in the game? Blah, 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 at the very end. Like, just injuries happen, man. It's a really physical game and guys get hurt and it freaking sucks.
Yeah.
So.
A couple other news items that we want to hit on before we dive into answering as many questions as we possibly can. 49ers, talk about carnage, obviously, like Brandon Ayuk tearing the ACL and MCL. Not that he had been playing well so far this season, but we know what he is as a player. We know what he means to that offense. Deebo Samuel hospitalized. You were actually tweeting about this, and I think can kind of weigh in on that a little bit more with some of your health background. But, again, more carnage in a different way for them. We know Ayuk is going to be out for the year. So is Ricky Pearsall a guy you're interested? Jauan Jennings dealing with his own injury stuff as well. Maybe McCaffrey coming back in the next couple of weeks, kind of trending in that way. What do you make of this offense just as a whole? There's like a ton of different angles you can hit on this, honestly.
I mean, I don't think we see CMC until early November. Jordan Mason looked like he played pretty much his similar role. So I think that's kind of just status quo. But the passing attack in general, George Kittle's also banged up. So this literally could be a starting trio of Jacob Cowing. We could see maybe Chris Conley on the field. We could see Ricky Pearsall and a backup tight end. That's what could happen. Now, I think George Kittle probably does play this week, but I don't think Deebo Samuel plays this week. I mean, now after we get the news yesterday, he's hospitalized with pneumonia. In today's medical climate, you getting hospitalized with pneumonia 10, 15 years ago would have been more commonplace than it is now. Most things are treated outpatient. So whether, I don't want to speculate too much on news that I don't have and things like that, but I can definitely tell you, I don't think he is going to play. Even if he's discharged today, tomorrow, whatever, by Wednesday, Thursday, what have you, I would be very surprised if Deebo plays this week. So again, we're talking about a situation where it's boiled down to Ricky Pearsall is going to play a big role in this offense this week and probably moving forward. I mean, he led them in snaps last week. We could talk about, okay, the box score wasn't great. It was his first freaking NFL game for a rookie who missed most of training camp. We know all the off-field stuff, but Pearsall could be a guy where, if this 49ers team, and Erickson talked about this all in the offseason about how healthy they were last year, and we see these things vary from year to year, Pearsall was a player that could walk into a huge role and a pivotal role in this offense in the weeks to come. So yes, I think you spend aggressively for him, 12 to 15%. In a lot of different instances, like if you had Evans, if you had Godwin, if you had a lot of these other guys that have gotten hurt or you're worried about, Pearsall could be a guy you're looking at for this week as, shoot, I might be flexing him. He could be my wide receiver 3 for the week. So I'm fine spending aggressively for a player that is extremely talented, has the first round draft capital pedigree, and we know that this week and probably moving forward, he's going to play a big role in this offense, especially we didn't even talk about Jauan Jennings' health to a certain degree. He's not even a lock to play this week. So
I just quickly, Brock Purdy, he's QB9 rest of season ECR. Is that
drop
right?
him.
Given the stuff we've seen, it feels like that's
it's got to go lower.
Yeah.
It has to go lower. And I think considering the current iteration of this offense, you're looking at a fringe QB1. I think there's a few guys you could probably make the case for upcoming matchups and stuff like that to go over Purdy.
Quickly, one last news item, then we'll dive into everybody's questions. The Rams, there were some, there's been some reporting that Cooper Kupp is on the trade block, that they are calling teams, that they are willing to eat some of his salary. They're looking for a second round pick. This is all stuff that's been reported this morning. Obviously, Kupp hasn't been playing the last few weeks. Neither is Puka. So we kind of have a sense of what this offense might look like if he were to be traded. But could this be a sign of a fire sale? I saw somebody tweet that the Vikings were interested in Stafford.
I saw that. I think that's just fodder and BS.
I'm not putting any stock into that.
Considering the source on that, I think that's just BS.
I totally agree, but I wanted to mention it because it's just at least an idea of if they're gonna, pull the trigger on moving Kupp, that feels like a sign of you're tearing this thing down to the studs. Maybe even McVay leaves. I don't know what to expect the rest of the season. That's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. But what was your reaction to seeing that rumor? And is there a player on the Rams that you think, if Kupp gets moved, you're feeling differently? On the one hand, you feel better about Puka when he comes back, but on the other hand, if they're going to rebuild anyway, why rush him back? So what was your takeaway from that rumor?
I think, there's a litany of teams that could use receiving help. I think, obviously the low-hanging fruit is, so everybody's going to, and I tweeted it out myself, was okay, could he would be a really good acquisition for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, do they have the money and all that kind of stuff? teams move around money and stuff like that. The reality is KC has to do something with their passing attack. It is this if it wasn't for an elite defense, this offense, I mean, this team would probably be like a 2-win team if it wasn't for their defense. Go ahead, Worm.
I was going to say, like, when you said the low-hanging fruit, I actually didn't expect you to say the Chiefs. I think you are correct about that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were going to say the Bucs. I mean, they now have this need, and Liam Cohen is from the Sean McVay tree.
That's a good call.
So who would he love to have?
That is a very good call. And the other part about that is Chris Godwin is because you're not even looking at overlapping skill sets. He's a free agent after this year. So, yeah, I mean, perfectly. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, that would be probably the best run out for Baker Mayfield and that offense, assuming that Mike Evans comes back in the next few, in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Then the Buccaneers still have a legitimate shot at competing for the NFC South crown and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, the Bucs would be definitely in the mix there. But I think this all comes to stand to reason that Kupp, I think he probably does get moved somewhere. I mean, looking at the state of the Rams right now, I think that they're not going to be competing for a playoff run. This is an extremely young team. I don't think that, considering reworking his contract and stuff, like, I don't put any kind of stock into the Stafford stuff. But again, we shall see. But if you can go out there and get Kupp in a deal or on the cheap, or as well as if Kupp gets moved, we're looking at, I mean, Jordan Whittington, I know, is hurt right now, but I think him or Tutu Atwell will probably be the biggest beneficiaries, assuming, Puka comes back in the next few weeks. But you need somebody else to catch freaking passes there. So I think one of those two players would be the biggest fallout as far as, like, looking at guys on waivers right now.
Brett Coleman, who's been on the show before, points out that he wouldn't even have to move if the Chargers traded for him, and they could use receiving help as well. So
yeah, I mean Herbert,
a lot of teams would benefit from Cooper Kupp is kind of the main takeaway.
Yes.
There are a few places he would go where he wouldn't be a huge boost to that team. So I want to quickly let everybody know our next giveaway is the best way to immortalize extreme failure, the teeny tiny loser belt, courtesy of our good friends at Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy football trophies. This chromed out mini belt screams loser in every way. It literally has loser written all over it. Make sure your league's last place finisher gets this constant reminder of how pitiful their season was. To enter, all you need to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on any of our videos, and that's it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. D-Bro, it's also just really fun to say loser.
I haven't heard your Sandler impression before, so that's definitely a treat.
I'm actually really bad at impersonations, like, across the board. It's
you don't say.
It's a very poor skill set of mine. Let's start diving into some of the questions here. I appreciate everybody dropping their comments and leaving some questions here. We're going to get through as many as we possibly can throughout the rest of the stream. Here's a question from Jamie. Lost Evans and Godwin last night, traded Diggs away last week. His only receivers are Malik Neighbors and an Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jennings and Dobbs and Watson are all available on waivers, so I guess it's a shallower league. Who's the best option of those guys?
Tank Dell would be #1 for me. And then you're probably looking at, if you're looking for this week, I think Tank Dell for rest of season. This week, actually, in Christian Watson, I've already gotten through that game for the primer. I think Watson's going to have a really solid game this week.
What is the Jauan Jennings injury update? Because I would like him if I was convinced of his health. I saw that there was something I want to
say it was a
write down what it
last week.
Like how serious it seemed.
The other thing about him is, I know that Shanahan talked about him being back this week, but the other part about Jauan Jennings is, I don't know if that's a definite. Like, he didn't even it wasn't like he was limited in practice and he was close to playing. He didn't practice at all last week. So there is a reality where we don't even see Jennings play this week either.
Yeah. How about this comment here? Lost Godwin for the rest of the season. These are my waiver options. Who should I prioritize between Jalen McMillan, Cedric Tillman, and Tim Patrick?
Tim Patrick's not even in the conversation for me. I think even with JMO out, I think you're probably going to see that wide receiver 2 role kind of gets split between Khalif Raymond and Tim Patrick. I think the fallout there is probably the biggest beneficiary. It is actually Sam Laporta, who's been hurt by Jameson Williams' breakout season so much. For me, it would be McMillan if you're looking at rest of season, McMillan and Tillman. And I would prioritize them in that way. Yeah,
I would go in the order they're written here: McMillan, then
yeah,
Tillman, then
yeah. I mean, the Browns are still a dumpster fire, man. I mean,
yeah.
it's still ugly. That entire team is ugly.
I'm really curious to see what the Browns look like next week now that Deshaun is out of the picture. Like if it is
Mhm.
Jameis Winston, they're playing the Ravens, who can be had through the air.
Yeah.
So like if
Tillman is a solid start, man. I mean, I think, and I already got through most of that game for the primer already. The biggest telling statistic that I could tell people out there last week, the fact that Jerry Judy's first read target share plummeted. He was third. It was David Njoku leading at 31.3%, and Cedric Tillman tied him for the team lead. That is a huge difference in how this offense has run in previous weeks. So this also could be Cleveland saying, no, Jerry Jeudy, to this point of the season, you've kind of sucked. We're going to go in other directions.
I'm actually going to be at that game with many of our coworkers here at Fantasy Pros. We're doing
Do you have Browns gear you're going to wear?
Yeah.
Or
I will be wearing purple, and I was told to not sit in the dog pound. Like what some of our locals in Cleveland were like, you can go to the game and you'll be okay. Like as long as you're not like being an obnoxious jerk, which I don't plan to be.
So here's the big thing. Are you going to, so Derrick Henry's first 60-yard run, are you cheering? Or are you just going to quietly be like,
oh, I'm cheering. I'm cheering. I'm not going to be like, pouring beer on the people around me and screaming in people's faces.
Oh, so you're not going to go the Dave Tepper route? Okay, cool.
No, yeah, exactly. I will not be David Tepper, but like I will be happy for my team, and the fact that the Browns are like 1-6 or whatever it is, like I'm hoping that the fans there will be more.
You're like, they got enough pain. I don't need to sit here and add to it.
Yeah. Let's look at another question here. Pointing out what a brutal injury week it was. Totally agree. Are you holding or dropping Justin Fields now that we've seen Russ Wilson have a better week than I expected, certainly?
Yeah, I think he's a hold. It kind of depends on what your options are and what you need for your team. Like if you're decimated, but in most instances, I am holding Fields. Yes, Jalen Warren is still worth holding, even with the running backs that you have there, because I mean, really, ETN, dude, who knows what we get out of him in the next few weeks? Like he's been so banged up. Like I wouldn't be surprised eventually, like he goes in the IR. I know it sounds maybe a little bit hyperbolic, but like he's been ineffective. He's been dinged up. Like,
yeah, I totally agree. I'm definitely holding Warren with these guys because I think like it looks like you have a lot of running back depth, but there's a very easy path to it not looking like that.
As last night showed us, that could change very quickly in 1 week.
I mean, Montgomery, I thought was going to be maybe injured during that game at one point too, and came back in.
Okay. I think he took a knee at the back or something like that.
Yeah, but like you just never know with these guys. So like, yeah, I would definitely keep holding on to Warren.
Thanks for the question, Nick.
Let's look at another one here. Drop Mooney for Jennings. Drop Fields for Bo Nix. It is a super flex league. What do you think about either of those options?
Ew. I'm not dropping Mooney for Jennings. Higher passing rate team. I think Atlanta, we could say the offensive ecosystem is a little bit better than the 49ers right now. I know that's crazy, but it's true. And really, this comes down to like in a super flex league, I'm not dropping Fields. I would drop somebody else. I'm not against you picking up Daniel Jones 2.0, aka Bo Nix, but I would not be dropping Fields because if Russ gets benched in the next week or two, you will wish in a super flex league that you had held on to Fields because he's gonna be a top 12 quarterback. So.
Where is Bo Nixon scoring? He's QB 14 on the year,
and then it's all the rushing.
Oh, that's
stuff.
That's total. That's not per game. Per game is QB 19. That's a starter.
Daniel Jones would wish he had that kind of stat line.
By the way, on a per game basis, Bo Nix is outscoring Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence, Patrick Mahomes are 2, 3, and 4 spots respectively behind Bo Nix.
This is one of those situations where reality and fantasy are far apart.
Yeah, imagine
the other quarterbacks are playing
before
good,
the year on Bo Nix. Anthony Richardson also behind him. That one's surprising given what we watched.
That hurt, dude. I looked at A-Rich's stuff, not to go on a side tangent, but I looked at A-Rich's stuff, and I mean, it's just basically out of that offense, you're starting Jonathan Taylor if he comes back this week, and it's pretty much nobody. Like it's bad.
Yeah. Here's a question from Sean. He has Fields and Herbert. He had Tua previously, leaning towards dropping Fields. In what order would you drop him for these three? Tua, Drake May, and Bo Nix. So obviously this is not super flex.
In that order, I would drop him in that order. And Tua would be the player that I would be spending like, the 15, 18%. Just one, look, this offense is still good. Miami has still got really good players, and they are going to bounce back. Like, I'm sorry, Tyreek Hill did not forget how to play football. Neither did Jalen Waddle. Tua's going to come back, and I think he's going to be put up strong QB1 numbers this week.
I want to ask
can't stop anybody.
I want to ask another question on the quarterbacks because I want to ask you about Drake May. Here's a question from Jake. 1 QB league, 6 points per touchdown. Which of these 2 quarterbacks should I roster? Dak, Tua, May, and Russ. Interesting group, honestly. Drake May has been a top 10 quarterback in those 2 starts that he's made. Now, he was going up against the Texans and the Jaguars, so it wasn't like the most difficult schedule that you can have, and the schedule does get more difficult going forward. Next several games: Jets, Tennessee, Chicago. Rams are easy, Dolphins. So there's some tough ones and there's some easy ones in there. What do you think about May in general, and then also kind of answering Jake's question with these 4 quarterbacks? Because I think May is a good player. Like, I liked him in the draft. I think he's a good player. I think he's one of these quarterbacks that can elevate the guys around him in a way that like obviously Brissett could not. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 10 quarterback rest of the way, but I think in quality matchups, I'm going to be really interested in starting Drake May.
I mean, I think for me, it's Dak and it's Tua. I'm not against May, but like you just talked about, Worm, the schedule is pretty rough for Drake May. I think in a 1 QB league, I'm looking at leaving Drake May on the waiver wire until we get to week 13, because then he gets a nice little 2-game stretch against Indy and Arizona. And week 13 and 15, so you can look at streaming him there. But looking at Tua and Dak, these are 2 teams that have pass game weapons. I mean, really, for Dak, he's kind of like the discount version of Geno Smith this year. A lot of it's just fueled by passing volume. Dallas can't run the ball as well, so they're going to throw. They've been throwing, so that's propped up a lot of Dak's numbers. But Dak and Tua would be the guys at the top of my list, although I would keep May kind of in the back pocket. Like, I would pick him up probably like week 11, week 12, probably just with the look ahead towards week 13 and week 15 if you're looking at streaming him for those matchups, because they are good.
We had another question in here about Dak, which you kind of hit on already. Just well, Sean McVay. I don't know who his actual name is.
Same hairstyle. I mean, you can't even tell the difference in the Avi.
I've had people on our TikTok before comment that, like, especially.
Are you about to say you're a Sean McVay lookalike?
No. I'm about to say people have told me that they thought I was Sean McVay on our TikTok before. And it's because I have one of my Fantasy Pros hoodies is like that Rams blue with like kind of yellow and white lettering. It kind of looks like the Rams. And sometimes when I have the right haircut and beard length, I have done TikToks before for us. Everybody should go follow us at Fantasy Pros on TikTok. And I've had people go, whoa, I thought this was Sean McVay on my screen for a second.
Worm, I love you to death, but
I don't see it.
That's like calling an Elvis impersonator in Vegas real Elvis.
I
don't know. I don't know if I can get on board with that.
I've already established that I'm bad at impersonations, and I also don't see the resemblance, but it's happened on enough videos that it's like a running bit with some of the other folks behind the scenes here. That it just keeps happening. Another quarterback question here from Jacob: Tua or Russ rest of season? We talked a bit about them already, and I'm assuming you're going to go Tua.
Yeah, it's Tua.
Should you bench Baker for Caleb this week? I would say yes, given Caleb's going up against the Commanders, who are
probably going to be,
and we don't know yet what the Bucs offense is going to look like. So I would bench Baker for Caleb.
Yeah, I would bench Baker. It's Caleb for me, and it's against the Commanders. The other part about that is you're probably going to see. I don't think Jaden Daniels plays this week. I think that if anything, Washington is probably going to be conservative with him. You'd rather lose him for one game than lose him for the rest of the season. So it's probably going to be a Marcus Mariota-led offense. And, well, while Marcus Mariota looked serviceable last week, they can't play the Panthers every single week. So,
got a tight end question here from Jacob. Is Mark Andrews back? He has 3 touchdowns across the last 2 weeks. Or do we like Otton with Evans and Godwin out? We definitely do like Otton. For sure.
It's odd.
But I think it's still worth asking, do you think Mark Andrews is back?
I think he's back-ish. He has been extremely productive, but if you still look at what he's been doing over the last few weeks, it's not like he's a truly like full-time, like back into his usual role that he's played for forever, like where he had like a 70, 80, 90% route share. I mean, Andrews has been getting by with just being extremely, extremely efficient with this. Like last night, as good as he was, Worm, he had a 44% route share. Like in most weeks, unless he is getting and I know we got 4 targets, but he caught all 4 of them and scored twice. So a lot of how good he is and his efficiency just on the limited volume and the limited routes is kind of covering up for the fact I think he's back to an extent where he is going to be on the fringe of tight end 1 now, where he was a firm tight end 2 before. But is he back to Mark Andrews of old in that role where he's a locked in top 5, top 6, top 7 guy every single week? I don't think he's there.
It's a lot more mouths to feed between the 20s. I do think the case for Mark Andrews being back is I think the red zone usage will continue. Not that he's going to catch, touchdowns on 50% of his targets or whatever. But I think besides Derrick Henry, he is their top option when healthy in the red zone and when trying to score touchdowns. Like, I think they like him better than likely in that part of the field. I know they like him better than Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers in that part of the field. They don't like to run with Lamar that much. So like when they're not handing it off to Derrick Henry, I mean, maybe you can make the argument that checking down to Justice Hill is higher on the list too. But like amongst the actual pass catchers, like I do think he's going to be the top option in the red zone. And I think this is an offense that's going to score a lot of touchdowns. So to me, that's the case, but he's very touchdown dependent. I don't think he's back to a guy who's going to accumulate the yardage and the pure number of targets that you need to be a regular, consistent, high-level option without getting in the end zone.
So while we're live right now, I'm just seeing on the old X timeline that it looks like Mike Evans, there's talk out there. Now, again, no huge, like, big account sources here, but I am seeing multiple tweets right now talking about Mike Evans probably will not be back until after their week 11 bye. So substantial missing time. I mean, that kind of fits loosely with the time frame for a hamstring aggravation, but that's more gas in the tank for Cade Otton.
Well, for some finally positive news, the Rams are opening up Puka Nacua's 21-day practice window. So that just got tweeted a couple minutes as well. So thankfully we have some positive developments.
Please come back soon, sweet prince.
Quick reminder for everybody about our waiver assistant. Take the guesswork out of waiver wire decisions with Fantasy Pros Waiver Assistant. Get instant analysis on potential moves from over 100 fantasy experts. Discover both the weekly and rest of season impact for every waiver ad. Visit fantasypros.com/myplaybook or download the My Playbook app to optimize your roster today. All right. Let's get into some more questions here. Are we dropping Anthony Richardson? And with Aiden hurt, would you trust Anthony Richardson against Houston?
No, I don't trust him at all. I mean, it's.
But are you dropping him then? Or
I mean, depending on who's out there, yeah, I don't have a problem dropping A-Rich at this point. It's just been, and I know I was huge Anthony Richardson. We all were. I mean, a huge Anthony Richardson stand in the offseason. I thought he was going to take a step forward as a passer. I thought it was going to be growing pains. I didn't see us sitting here on the precipice of week 8 and talking about who is the worst NFL passer. Is it Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young right now? And I think that's an honest conversation to have right now. And it's that hurts me because I like A-Rich, the talent.
I threw up another comment here from Michael. He asked about Richardson. He also asked if Mahomes is a cut in a shallower league. I mean, Mahomes is being outscored by Bo Nix right now in fantasy and short of them trading for Cooper Kupp, I'm not sure how it gets better.
I mean, Mahomes, I threw this out there and he didn't, disprove the tweet. In the regular season, he has not put up 20 fantasy points since week 12 of last year in the regular season. So yeah, Mahomes is still a top shelf NFL quarterback. He's awesome in fantasy. He's not great. I don't hate you cutting both of them, as insane as that sounds.
I don't think it'd even be a question if his name wasn't Patrick Mahomes.
No.
This wasn't the guy that everybody has anointed, like rightfully so, but that everybody's anointed as the next GOAT and the guy who's like the consensus. Nobody else is even on the same tier of him right now as a quarterback. And if he wasn't that guy, if this was, Joe Smith and he was putting up these numbers for as long as he has been putting them up on a team that is not explosive anymore. It's a team that doesn't have good, help around him. It's a team that wants to rely on defense and running the ball. I mean, I don't think anybody would even be thinking twice about cutting him.
Currently, the QB 19 in fantasy points per game. And you're looking at right now he's got. Here's another crazy thing for Worm. Patrick Mahomes right now has more interceptions than touchdown passes. When was the last time we could ever say that? 6 touchdown passes right now, 8 picks.
It's crazy to me that, by the way, that he up until last night was the favorite for MVP.
No, that was just
a ludicrous
betting market. That's been horrible. Yeah, I agree with that.
He
should have been in the top 5 for the last few weeks.
If you had no knowledge of anything, if you had never watched football before September 1st, you would be just baffled by those. You'd be like, why is it not Lamar or
Lamar's probably, he's got to be, he
Daniels,
should be considered the favorite for what is third MVP?
It would be his third. Yeah. Lamar. Lamar definitely should be the favorite right now. The case against Lamar is, just that voters don't like to give it to the same guy twice in a row, but Lamar has been the best player so far, but there's such a long way to go. You don't win the MVP in October, but as of right now, Mahomes being the favorite is what was
wild.
Here's a question from Ben. A 10-team league needs to drop a running back for a receiver. Would you drop Tracy, Dowdle, Chubb, ETN, or Bigsby?
Right now, I think the easiest drop right here is probably Nick Chubb. And I know that, he came back, he got most of the work as far as on the ground, but Tracy, if he takes over that backfield, he's honestly been better. As bad as the Giants have been as an offense, we could say they've been in line, maybe better than Cleveland, maybe better days are ahead. But I think your conversation here is between Tracy and Chubb, and I would rather have Tracy's upside for the rest of the season. Or it's Tracy and ETN, and I would rather hold ETN considering and on that backfield.
To me, the biggest one I'm not even considering is Bigsby. I just think he looks.
No, you can't consider.
He shouldn't even be in this conversation.
Or Dowdle, to be honest. He's the leader of that backfield and in that offense. His role is still trending up, so I agree.
Yeah. Question from Recyclops. Needs a solid rest of season quarterback. We talked a bit about Russ and Tua already. How about Trevor Lawrence in that conversation? Where does he kind of rank amongst those other guys?
I think Lawrence is behind all of them. Jacksonville has been a dysfunctional offense. One good game, and they've really kind of nerfed Lawrence. Once they get a lead, they've been running the ball, playing conservative. This has not been, run and gun and throw it all over the freaking field. So I think Lawrence is still behind those other guys for him.
Get a question from Megan. Good afternoon, pros. Hey, good afternoon to you too, Megan. Keep both Ray Davis and Watson or drop someone for another player. 12-team PPR league. Are you looking to keep guys like Ray Davis? She does have James Cook and Watson, or are you
keeping them?
On from them?
I'm keeping them. It depends on who you got out there. If Ricky Pearsall was out there, I'd probably take Ricky Pearsall right now over Christian Watson, just because Green Bay is playing matchups and it is week to week. So really, it's kind of, depending on what coverage shell they face that week, it can be back and forth. And I think you could see a more consistent role if, really San Francisco, what if Kittle goes out? What if Jennings doesn't come back? Pearsall could be the wide receiver 1, as insane as it is.
We've got someone who needs some encouragement from you, Debro. He was 2-4, and then he played Daniels, Monty Flowers, Evans, and Debo, and now he's 2-5. Can he get some encouragement, Debro? Cheer him up.
This is the therapy couch. You still got a lot of really talented players. Jane Daniels is not out for the entire season. Monty is okay. Flowers had a down game. I get the injuries to Mike Evans. Debo is not out for the entire season. He's going to get out of the hospital. He's going to eventually be back. Probably not this week at all, but better days are ahead.
For some more therapy, please join our Fantasy Pros Discord community, chat with other fans, and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Here's our in-season schedule. We've got Joe, Welsh, and Boggs Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern. We've got Welsh and Erickson Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's actually for this week only for that timing. Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is a change from the usual one. Myself and Fitz at 5 p.m. Eastern on the first Tuesday of each month. That's with a Dynasty focus. And also with a Dynasty focus is Fitz and Boggs at 5 p.m. Eastern on the third Tuesday of each month. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. All right, let's speed through some more questions here before we wrap up. Javonte Williams or David Montgomery? Williams coming off a great game, but Montgomery did get banged up a little. It's just got to be though, right?
I think the answer is you play both, honestly, Zach.
So do you like Javonte moving forward then, or do you think that was just taking?
No, I like Javonte for this week. I think it's the matchups that you're looking for, because after this week he has a tough run out. He gets the Ravens, the Chiefs, two arguably top 5 run defenses. Then it gets a little bit better. So like you're really looking at Javonte. I would probably try to sell high and trade him away after this week once he steamrolls the Panthers. But if you hold on to him and you can't get any good, as far as offers back after the Ravens and Chiefs, it does get better. They get the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Browns and the Colts. So you can run on all those teams. So it just kind of depends on what you can do with Javonte.
Who are some running backs that you'd be willing to trade Pacheco for in a 1-for-1 deal?
Oh, good Lord. Some running backs, assuming Pacheco comes back and you're looking at, now part of this comes down to what is the state of your team right now? Like, do you have a team that has only like 1 loss, 2 losses? Are you really looking at for the rest of the season? That's where I'm looking to try to get Pacheco. So if you are below 500, at 500, you're literally fighting for your fantasy playoffs right now. Pacheco, trading for him is not a move that I would be making. But if you were looking to get him for the stretch run, I think in a lot of instances, you're looking at probably parsing away like a wide receiver 3 type right now, like JSN, maybe Josh Downs, Wan'Dale Robinson. Probably those are light kind of deals. Maybe a Jalen Waddle, depending on what your wide receiver room looks like.
How about should I drop Moss to pick up Allgeier or Charbonnet?
Yes. Moss, over the last 2 weeks, has lost this backfield.
Who do you prefer, Allgeier or Charbonnet?
I would take Allgeier. I think they're both in the same kind of area code.
Yeah.
But just kind of splitting hairs here, I'll go with the team that has the better offensive line. So that's Tyler Allgeier.
There's a question from Jose. Happy Tuesdays, fellas. Happy Tuesday to you as well. Should I put Kareem Hunt in the flex versus the Raiders or stick with Brian Thomas Jr.?
I think you're playing, honestly, I'd be playing both of these guys. I mean, it depends on what your options are. I mean, I think if you're looking at, I'm probably going Kareem Hunt just because the matchup is that good and you're going to get a good mix of floor and ceiling in that matchup. And then, I mean, the other part about it is Jacksonville gets Green Bay. So if they can run the ball, they will run the ball. They could take some of the air out of Brian Thomas Jr.'s sails.
Would you drop the Jets defense for the Broncos defense?
Yes, I would do that.
How much FAAB are you willing to spend on Jauan Jennings? We talked about him a bit at the top of the show, but we didn't really put a number to it.
Depending on your team, I mean, 12 to 15%, I think is somewhere in the area code. And this all depends on how, what's the state of your team, how aggressive is your league on waivers and stuff like that. I think the conversation starts at 10%, but I'm willing to, in most leagues, I'll probably live in that 12 to 14%. I won't go higher than that. So because for me, if I miss out on him, fine. I'll just get Sterling Shepard. I'll get and another guy we haven't even discussed here. I really like the upside for the rest of the season with Troy Franklin. I think he's a guy you can sneak through waivers and, for $1, maybe $2. He could be their wide receiver 1 by the end of the season. It's just freaking Cortland Sutton. As bad as Bo Nix is, I think Troy Franklin's still good at football.
Would you drop JuJu for McMillan?
I would. I think JuJu is going to be out multiple weeks. Pat and I were on opposite sides of the table here. I don't think that JuJu is getting the Rashee Rice role. I think that now he's hurt and he's probably out 3 to 4 weeks. So you're holding on to JuJu for what? Like he comes back and he probably isn't a full-time player when he does come back, and that could be 3 weeks down the road. So you need somebody in your lineup, considering the state of everything in fantasy right now, that can help you right now. So drop JuJu.
Ricky Pearsall or Calvin Ridley rest of season?
Pearsall. Dude, have we seen the Tennessee Titans passing attack? Like, that's how bad it is. Like, Mason Rudolph, Will Levis, does it really matter who the hell is throwing him the ball? Doesn't really matter that much.
Who do you like best? I don't know if this is for like 1 week or for the rest of the season. Keon, Coleman, Rashad Bateman, or Jalen McMillan. How would you rank those guys? You know that who I want you to say here.
I mean, dude, okay, so here's the thing. I love Bateman, and I think he is playing really, really damn good football right now. The problem is his target share is not high. He is their field stretcher. So versus teams where they're bad versus deep passing, you're going to see he's going to have those spike weeks. But I mean, if you look at the box scores right now, what's the difference in Rashad Bateman and Alec Pierce over multiple weeks? I mean, they're basically the same guy.
Zay Flowers did get banged up a bit in this game. He
did
came back in, but he didn't really do much after coming back in. Something to keep an eye on. It is a short week as well, so maybe for this upcoming week you get a little bit more Bateman in the game plan.
It's Coleman, McMillan, and then Bateman for me. And yeah. I was not a person that was high on Keon Coleman as a prospect or for most of this season. I think Buffalo throwing the ball more last week could be indicative of what they do moving forward with Amari Cooper. And I think that's going to help Keon Coleman, one, with the volume, but two, take some of the pressure off the kid. Like, asking him to be your go-to X receiver out the hop should never have been what Buffalo was going to do. He's not ready for that.
Would you trade away Chuba Hubbard for Brian Thomas Jr.?
Yes.
His other running backs are Achane, Monty, Chase Brown, and Brooks
yes.
on IR.
I mean, I think that's a win. Jonathan Brooks, I think, eventually factors into this backfield. Carolina, I mean, Andy Dalton looked like the belle of the ball for like 2 weeks, and now that entire team has kind of gone back into the tank. And here's the thing, Worm, what if Deontay Johnson gets traded? We don't even know if that, like, what if that happens? Like, this offense might just turn into a total dumpster fire.
I don't think they would do it because they're in the division, but Deontay Johnson to the Bucs would be really appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, like the Chiefs is the one that everybody points to, but I think that would be an interesting one
as well. Very nice.
Let's speed through just a couple more questions here to squeeze them in before we get out of here. Let's see. Sorry, we already answered some of these, so I want to make sure we get to some new players. How about this trade? Kyler and JSN for Breece Hall and Tutu Atwell. I suppose it depends on if it's Superflex or not, but if you're getting the Breece Hall side, like a billion%, yeah.
I mean, unless it's Superflex, I'm taking the Breece Hall side, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
If that's one QB, yeah, smash the Breece Hall side.
Yeah. Is it time to trade Deontay Johnson? We just talked about trading in real life. What about in fantasy?
I mean, I'm not against that. This all comes down to what are you getting back? If you're getting the full value of Deontay Johnson, i.e. what he's done, like what he was doing, right, like basically where he's a borderline wide receiver 1, if you're getting that to high end 2 wide receiver value out of Deontay Johnson in a trade, I'm not against that. But again, like just in a vacuum, there's a lot of context that's missing out of that. So it just depends.
Let's see. What would you think about trading Marvin Harrison Jr.? Is it somebody that you want to, sell low on? Is it somebody you want to buy low on? What do you expect out of him rest of season?
I think it really comes down to like, what do I think out of him? I think he is going to continue to be, because his splits, and I've been writing this up in the primer, his splits have been wild this year. If anybody wants to know why why his stat lines and things like that have ebbed and flowed the way that they've done, the way that Arizona is utilizing him is what's leading to that. And really, if you look at his upcoming matchups, I'm more inclined to trade him away than I am to keep him, only because his target share goes up and his efficiency goes up massively when he faces single high teams. He's got a lot of 2 high teams coming up here. The Bears are single high, but they're extremely good as far as a secondary. Same thing with the Dolphins. If you're looking at that's why you had the down. That's why I bet his unders versus the Chargers. They're 2 high heavy. The Jets are too high heavy. Seahawks have been back and forth, but you're looking at like down the stretch, the Vikings are too high heavy. So the Patriots. I'm more likely to trade him away, and also just add on to top of all of that Kyler Murray is still not playing good football as a passer. Like his rushing saved him from a fantasy perspective. He still was terrible as a passer last night.
Here's a lovely comment. Warmly loving the hair. Thank you very much.
No, Ian, don't play to the crowd, Ian. Worm doesn't need this type.
Well, it's the rare opportunity on this live stream for somebody who has hair. So
okay. I see. Okay. My nicely freshly buffed head says, hold my beer.
He is thinking of dropping Richardson and Pittman for Russell Wilson and Jalen McMillan. I don't know if you can hear, but my doorbell just rang and my dog is
your hairstylist is there for your weekly trim.
What do you think about this one though? Dropping Richardson and Pittman for Russ Wilson and McMillan.
I would drop Richardson. I wouldn't be dropping Pittman because if Richardson continues to stink, then there might be an instance where they go to Joe Flacco. And I think there's a big drop off talent-wise between Pittman and McMillan.
All right. We'll wrap up there because we are supposed to be wrapping up.
Because you got to go get your haircut. I mean,
I have no idea who is
standing outside your door.
I can't even tell you the last time somebody rang my doorbell. So I have no idea who it is. But we will get going.
The dogs of Fantasy Pros have been making a regular appearance, man. We had Janet, and now we got Worms Dog.
Man. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in for all the questions this week. Best of luck. If you have any more questions we didn't get to, hit us up on Twitter. Go to Discord as well. Debro's on there. We'll be answering your questions there. And you'll have Joe back next week. So thanks for letting me fill in here, Debro. Good chatting with you. And I hope everybody has good luck with their waiver claims this week.
Can't leave him waiting, Worm. Gotta go answer the door, man.
Wild. All right. I'll see you guys.